I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, and I'm using a random number generator to pick the next game. Last episode, we commanded our squad and played Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. And this episode, we're fighting through the streets of New York and playing Def Jam Fight for New York. Def Jam Fight for New York was released on September 21st, 2004, and was developed by AKI Corporation and published by EA Games. This game was really fun, besides from some technical issues I had with it. Before we get started, make sure to like this video because it helps out the channel, and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss any of the future games. Without further ado, this is my experience with Def Jam Fight for New York. In Def Jam Fight for New York, we're going to go through the story mode to consider this one complete. This game has a story between the fights, and there are a lot of cutscenes along the way, so I'm going to cover each one but sum them up because a lot of them are a bit dragged out. So the game starts like a movie. We get a little cutscenes and then credits in between them showing the creators of the game and the artists that are credited for being in the game. I actually like this because it's different than most of the games I've played up to this point. In the opening cutscene, we see a man that is arrested at what looks like an underground fight club. It's just one person, and everyone else there is allowed to just leave, I guess. The two cops take him outside and put him in their car. It's not a normal police car, but something a detective would drive. Then it shows them driving away, and we get the two cops making jokes about who's going to take over for him since he's going to jail. And we find out his name is D-Mob. You might know who that is from the other games, but I'm not sure because I haven't played any of the other ones. Anyways, as they're driving, an SUV shows up and slams into the side of the car, causing it to flip. The man gets out and helps D-Mob into the SUV, and the cutscene ends. We don't get a look at the person behind this yet, so that's a bit interesting. In the next cutscene, it shows the cop giving the best description of the person behind the wheel of the SUV. This leads us into the create a character that we're going to be playing as in the game. This was super creative, and I like that instead of just making our character, it's actually connected to the story. We go through and make our character based on what the cop says we look like. I put some effort into making our character, and this is what I landed on at the end of it. I want to point out here that about an hour into this game or so, I saved the game and got off. When I came back to play again, my file had corrupted, so randomly our character is going to change, and I just wanted to let you know why. I had to go through all of the beginning of the game again, and I wasn't happy about it at the time, so I didn't put any effort into creating my character or anything that involved customizing our character. I don't know why, but I had a bunch of issues with this game. My save file got corrupted, the game would freeze randomly while playing, and then among other things that I just had problems with. I don't know if this was just my copy of the game, or if it's just like this, but ultimately it made playing the game annoying. Anyways, let's move into the next cutscene. We arrive back at the hideout for D-Mob and all of his boys. They question if we're the real deal and if we can hold our own in a fight. We tell them that we can, and then they tell us to prove it. Now we're gonna move into some gameplay. But before that, we have to pick the fighting style in which we want to start the game with. We can pick between kickboxing, which is primarily attacking using kicks, Street Fighter, which is strong punching attacks, martial arts, which is a quick strike combo and flying attacks, wrestling, which is excellent grappling ability, and submission, which is the ability to submit opponents. I went with kickboxing because it sounded like the most fun during the game. I ended up not really using kicks during my fights and went with punches instead, but at the time I wanted to try using kicks. Then we head into the tutorial fight for the game. This fight cannot be lost, and it's just teaching us how to play the game, how to use weak and strong punches and kicks, grappling, blocking, and then eventually showing us that when our blaze meter is filled up all the way, we can use a blaze attack, which is a super strong attack that is usually over the top and that can knock out opponents if their health is low enough. I want to point out that during the beginning of this game, I didn't fully understand how to play the game, and I would get my opponents in low health and couldn't figure out how to knock them out. When we switched to our other character, I knew what I was doing, so it went much faster in the fights. Once we're done with the fight, we get another cutscene where everyone is like, he's good, besides one of the members of the crew, and then T-Mob gives us money to upgrade our outfit, and we get our very own apartment since we can't go back to the place that we were staying before, because now we're wanted by the cops. Once inside our apartment, we can go over to the map to pick what fights we want to take on, and even visit all the shops in the game. We can go and buy new clothes, get jewelry, get tattoos, go to the barbershop, and even head over to the gym to increase our stats. Since we were told to update our gear, that's where I went first. There are a bunch of options in this game, and we just need the money to purchase whatever we want to wear. Some of the items require us to complete specific events, but for the most part, we just buy whatever we want as long as we have the money to do so. This is what I landed on for now, something comfortable to fight in. On the map, it will show us all the venues that we currently have fights available in. Most of them require us to beat all the opponents there to face the boss of the area, which is usually some sort of famous artist, but for now, we're just going to fight the first person named Trick to show off the real fighting in the game. This fight takes place in a venue known as the Foundation. This area is just a rundown garage that was converted to fight in. There are a bunch of people watching the fight, and they will become our out-of-bounds area. And if you run towards them, they will push you back into the middle of the arena. So it's kind of like a barrier so that we have an enclosed place to fight. We can use them to perform combos and moves, and sometimes we can keep our opponents trapped in them and just do a bunch of damage really quickly. If the crowd decides to hold on to them, we can grapple them and do a combo move with the person in the crowd. This seems very cheap, but a nice feature to add. The crowd will also hold weapons for some reason, and we can walk over them and grab them to use on our opponent. These are sometimes difficult to land a hit using, but if you do, it does end up doing massive damage. So if you're struggling with a fight, it might pay off to grab a weapon and try to take out the person that way. I was still getting used to this game during this fight, so I ended up grabbing a beer bottle and hitting Trick right in the head with it. This caused for me to get the knockout on Trick, and we were able to win the first fight of the game. There are a lot of fights in this game, and I'm not going to cover all of them, but I will cover the important story ones, and when we encounter certain boss fights. Then moving forward, I won't cover the basic fights besides talking about the new venues. Sound good? Good. Let's move on. After each win, we get points based on how well we competed in the fight, how well we used combos, how quickly we ended the fight, and things like that. This will be broken down into money and how much we earned for the fight. This first fight got us 95,550 points, and we earned $955 from it. Not too bad for the first fight of the game. We will also earn development points for winning a fight, which will allow for us to increase our stats. We can unlock new characters, unlock new venues, new blaze moves, and even get new clothes and jewelry that are available at the shop for us to buy. After the fight, I went over to the gym so I could increase my stats and become a better fighter. When at the gym, we can upgrade 5 categories. Upper strength, which is how strong our punches will be. Lower strength, which is how strong our kicks will be. Speed, which is how fast we can throw punches and kicks. Toughness, which is stamina and our grappling ability. And last is health, which is how much damage we can take from our opponents. Since I was using a kickboxing fight style, I of course decided to increase my upper strength. And then some lower strength later on, making it about even. I ended up doing this because I was struggling throwing kicks. Then I added a little bit to health, toughness, and speed as I continued to grab development points for winning fights. I don't think I should have went this way, but that was my idea at the time. After a random fight, we get a cutscene where we can pick a girlfriend for this game. This plays into the story later on, but for now it's just something random. I chose Kimura to impress. The interesting thing about this fight is that right afterwards, if we lose, we get this random girl that nobody wanted to pick up. I guess no one wants her because she's mean or something, I don't really know. But if we win, then you leave the bar with the girl you selected from the cutscene. Once finishing all the fights at the Foundation, we can fight our first boss of the game, Omar Epps. But since I couldn't beat him, I went over to take on the other venue on the map first. This venue is called The Limit, and is basically just a biker bar. That's how I would explain it. We just fight on a wooden floor in the middle of the bar, and we can use things like the pool table and the jukebox to damage our opponents. And the boss here is Danny Trejo, which seems to be a bit random, but I feel like he would hang out in a biker bar. I just get that vibe from him. But before that fight, I checked out the last venue on the map called Club 357. This is a club with a wrestling ring in the middle. There is only a boss fight in this venue with Ice-T. This is the fight that moves the story along, so potentially if I was good at the game, I could just fight him and skip all the other fights. But I'm not that good, so I couldn't do that. I went and fought Trejo, and honestly, this fight went really well. I started the fight getting destroyed, but I was able to turn it around, and at the end, we perform a blaze attack on him, then knocked him out by pushing him into the pool table and kicking his head against it. We won the fight. Nothing new here, but the boss fights give out way more development points for winning. After clearing out Trejo and Omar Epps, it was time to take on Ice-T. And this fight was super hard. He's a master of submission and kept causing me to tap out. But I finally got a run where I was able to get his health down low enough, throw him into the corner of the ring, and then kick him in the face to knock him out, allowing for us to finally move the story along. After the fight, we get another cutscene where we finally meet Snoop Dogg's character, Crow. He's the top guy from the opposing crew, and he's basically telling them that he's going to own all of the territories and tells any fighter that wants to make real money to join up with him before it's too late. And then he kind of just leaves. That's it for now, but we know that he's going to be a problem in the future. The next venue is called the Babylon and takes place in another bar, but this one is like Jamaican themed or something. It's about the same as the biker bar, but instead of the pool table, we have a stage on the far side of the arena. During this section, we get to fight with our girlfriend against Carmen Electra. I think this fight is for claim of us, our character. I wasn't really paying attention during this section, but this allows for us to fight as our girlfriend. It's the only time in the whole game where we don't use our character to fight. This fight took way too long because they just don't hit as hard as our character does now. But I was able to win the fight after some time and move on. During the next section of the map, we're invited to compete in a free-for-all tournament at the power plant. This is just an area with fences on both sides inside of a power plant yard for whatever reason. It is such a strange place to fight. Anyways, this is fun because it's a fatal 4-way fight. We have to keep ourselves from getting knocked out against 3 other opponents. It doesn't matter if we knock out everyone, we just have to be the last one standing. I like this because it changed up just fighting one-on-one with every fight leading up to this one. Once we complete the tournament, we get another cutscene where we're all sitting at the table with D-Mob, and we're trying to figure out how to get back at Crow. We decide that we're going to go around and win all of his venues and earn the respect of everyone in them. I guess we're going to do this by just beating them up. That's the plan. But before that, we have to finish the Babylon and take on Sean Paul. This was the first fight that our character changed in because I lost my data, so that's why we look different. But everything else is the same besides that. I tried to make the stats and what we've completed up to that point exactly the same. Sean Paul is pretty easy, and we move on pretty quickly from this fight. The next venue we have to take down is the Dragon House, which is just like a Chinese dojo thing. This has wooden railings around it to keep us fighting in the center of the room. This whole venue ends up being pretty simple, and we can move on to the next boss fight that matters. We head over to the Red Room and take on WC. The Red Room is another venue that just has a wrestling ring right in the middle of it. These are cool because we can throw our opponents against the ropes, but these rely more on actually fighting, instead of using the venue props and items to take down our opponent. We can even jump off the ropes, which I was kind of surprised by. We knock out WC with the same move in the corner of the ring that we knocked out Ice-T with, and then we get a cutscene where Crow shows up again, tells D-Mob that this war is costing too much money for both of them, and suggests having a winner-takes-all fight. His best man versus D-Mob's best fighter. The winner gets all of the venues and the loser can go to Jersey. D-Mob picks us to fight Crack, which is Fat Joe. This pisses off Stinky Fingers in our crew and he storms off. He hasn't liked us from the beginning and that pushed him over the edge. Now we get to fight Crack one-on-one in the venue known as Club Murder. This fight is one of the most frustrating things I did in this game. Crack only wants to pull out his WWE moves the entire fight. I cannot do anything to him, and he just uses wrestling moves. He loves the POW driver and the pedigree, and it was making me so mad while I was fighting him that I almost stopped playing for a little bit. This fight took so many attempts, but I did finally get it. Club Murder is basically a cage match. There's a cage all around us and barbed wire on the higher sections of that cage. Everywhere in the area does damage to us. It's probably one of the better venues, but the fight here was so annoying. After winning the fight on a good run where I was able to land all my attacks and finish the fight using a blaze attack on Crack, we get another cutscene where D-Mob tells Crow to enjoy Jersey. We leave the venue and we're driving in our limo. D-Mob gives us his chain and welcomes us to the crew permanently, and that we're family now. A car drives up next to us, and it's Crow's crew that pull out guns and open fire on us. The two cars crash and we see three men fleeing to the subway. We're not hurt, so we end up chasing them down there. Once in the subway, we see that they got onto the train and Stinky Fingers is standing there making the finger guns at us. We know that he's changed sides and he was in the car that shot at us. At this point, I didn't know if D-Mob was alive or dead, but before we can even head back up there, Trejo is still standing in the subway randomly, and he points his gun at us. He's about to shoot us, but then he realizes he's out of ammo, so now we have to have a fist fight with him in the subway. This is a story-based fight, and the only time we fight in this venue. The best part of this fight is that the train comes by every little bit, and we can try and knock them down onto the tracks. If they're down there on the tracks and the train hits them, then we win the fight automatically. So that's what I focused on the whole time. And finally, I got Trejo on the tracks at the right time, and he gets hit by the subway train. He's dead at this point. I don't care if he shows up again or not, he's dead. No one is surviving that. You cannot survive getting hit by a subway at full speed. Anyways, we win the fight and move on from this really long cutscene / fight section of the game. Afterwards, we get another cutscene that shows us heading back up to the street to see if D-Mob is alive. We get up there, we realize that he is alive, and we're trying to get him out of the area, but we mentioned that we're going to kill Crow, and D-Mob tells us that that's not the way and we have to stick to our plan. The cops are too close now, so we have to leave D-Mob there, and we take off. Back at the hangout, we talk about what we're going to do next, which is to continue D-Mob's plan of taking over the venues, but we're going to need some help now, and the scene ends. We get a bunch of new venues to fight in on the map now, and we can just continue on. The next important thing is the team tournament, which is the same as the free-for-all tournament, but this time we have to tag with someone. In this fight, us and our partner will take down 2 other people. We can pick which partner we want to have in this tournament between Omar Epps and Ice-T. I chose Omar Epps because he's a striker, and I think that would come in handy during this tournament. The tournament takes place in a venue called Chop Shop, which is just a metal arena in a parking lot with cars all around it. But before the fight, we get a cutscene with Magic, which is Busta Rhymes, and he's talking smack about how he's going to win and get the new truck for winning the tournament. It's nothing yet, but we're making a new enemy with him at this point. We then get to pick our partner and head into the tournament. When we get to the finals, we have to face Busta Rhymes and the partner that we didn't pick, so in my case, it was Ice-T. This fight wasn't very challenging at all, but I like the idea of having a tag team fight in this game. I mentioned it before, but I really like when it changes from just a one-on-one fight, because we do so many of them in a row that it's just nice to have a nice change. After the fight, it shows us leaving in our brand new truck, and when we pass Magic, we tell him that he didn't win the truck, but he found himself a new girlfriend, and then we flip him the bird and drive away. This is the beginning of dealing with him for a while. We continue with our fights and head back to the power plant for some basic fights, and then the boss fight was Slick Rick. This fight was extremely short because we owned him in the whole fight. I don't know if he's just not good, or if I was just getting better at playing the game, or if I just had the better matchup, but it was so easy. After completely owning Slick Rick, we head over to the gauntlet and fight Little Flip. This is another caged-in arena, but more like a UFC cage, just the walls are a bit higher. At this point, I noticed that they have a lot of similar venues, but with minor cosmetic changes, which is fine, but it's something I did start to notice. This fight isn't that bad either, but Little Flip put up much more of a fight than Slick Rick did, and it took me a little bit to take him down, but I was able to throw him against the cage, then kick his head into it to knock him out and win the fight. We're getting 3,500 development points for winning these fights now, but that really doesn't do that much when it comes to upgrading our stats. I will say that the further along I went into the game, I started to use kicks again because they were doing a lot more damage now. After the fight, we get a cutscene where Magic shows up in the parking lot and tells us that Crow wants us to stay out of his venues. We respond by telling Magic to relay our message that if Crow is tired of losing, then he should just get better fighters. This causes Magic to tell us to fight him one-on-one, and then he shoves us into our truck. We then have to fight him right here in the parking lot. Just us with 2 vehicles behind us that we can throw each other onto. At the end, I thought I was going to lose because he put me in danger health and filled up his blaze meter, but I was able to grab a crowbar from the crowd and hit him twice, which was pretty lucky, and that knocked him out, and we won the fight. That was a super close one. We move on to the finals of the free-for-all tournament, and we have to take out a bunch of large fighters at the foundation. It comes down to myself and David Banner. We beat his head against the pole to win the fight, winning the tournament. This leads to us fighting WC again at the Chop Shop, and we take him down with no problem. Now we're cruising through these boss fights, really without any issue. After the fight, we have a cutscene where Crow comes to visit us and recruit us to fight for his crew instead of D-Mobs, and we tell him no and laugh in his face, basically. This pisses Crow off, and we know that he's going to think of some plan to get back at us. But in the meantime, we head to the Limit, another bar, to fight Exhibit. This fight isn't difficult at all. There are a bunch of other fights after this, but nothing to really talk about. We fight at another UFC-style arena, a construction site, and a rooftop before we get another cutscene where Crow and his boys grab us and hit us with a baseball bat and take us into the back room of the venue. Crow wants to know if we reconsidered his offer. We tell him no, and our answer still stays the same. He then tells us that he kidnapped our girlfriend and that if we want her to remain safe, we need to win back all the clubs and put the bosses back in place. And if anyone asks, we had a change of heart and want to make some real money. Now we have to go back and fight all of the bosses from our crew one by one and take back all of the venues. I'm not going to show these fights, but I will tell you all the fights we did during this section. I wasn't really a fan of this because I felt like the game was just extended for no reason. But here we are. We took on Ghostface Killer at the Dragon House, Freeway at the power plant, Capone at the Foundation, Eric Simon at the Pit, Memphis Bleak at the Limit, Scarface at the Babylon, Flava Flav at the Terror Dome, Ludacris at 7th Heaven, and Tech at Hunts Point Scrapyard. There was so many fights for no reason. The last fight is with Redman or Doc at Club 357. Before the fight, Blaze confronts us, and since we can't say anything, he just tells us that we don't deserve D-Mob's chain, and then he ends up taking it from us and calling us out for being fake. Once we take out Doc in an easy fight, we get a cutscene confronting Crow about wanting our girl back, but he tells us that we have one last job to do for him before we can see her. We refuse at first, but he says if we ever want to see her again, we're gonna do this job. So we get in the car with his crew and head out. When we get to the scrapyard, Magic is beating up Blaze with a baseball bat. Magic then gives us the bat and tells us to finish him. He wants us to kill Blaze. Instead of hitting Blaze, we hit WC instead, and then we get pushed down. Blaze comes over to stand up for us, and then we get into a 2v2 fight with Kraken Magic. Blaze starts this fight with half health, so we have to protect him because doing this fight without him is basically impossible. It took me a couple tries, but we were finally able to get a run where we took out Crack, and then it ended up being 2-on-1 against Magic. At this point, I know I have the fight in the bag, and we just take him down with no real problem. I ended this fight with almost full health, and I found it funny that I knocked out Magic with a haymaker to the back of his head. He would not fight me during this fight. No matter what I tried to do, he would not lock on to me. We question Magic and find out that our girl is going to be killed anyways, but it's at an old tire factory in Brooklyn. We head over there right away and find that Stinky Fingers is there pouring gasoline everywhere with our girl tied up in the back. He tells us the factory is going to burn down, in quotations, with both of us inside, and he's finally going to beat us in a fight. He sets the arena on fire, and we have to fight him inside of a ring of fire. I was so excited to finally be able to fight him, and honestly, he put up a good fight. We were eventually able to take him down on our first attempt, though. We knocked him out by punching him into the fire. I didn't think the fire would cause a knockout, but it ended up working out in my favor here. This leads directly into a cutscene showing the building burning. Blaze is waiting outside for us, and we're able to escape with our girlfriend. Blaze then tells us that everything has just gotten out of hand, so we decide that we're going to try to meet up with Crow. We head over and meet up with Crow and his crew to confront him. He tells us that we're crazy if we think we're going to fight him one-on-one, and then he sends his crew after us. Crack and WC tells him they're out and they're going to join us, and then the two crews have a massive fight in the parking lot. Blaze tells us that we don't need to worry about this fight and we need to go inside and find Crow. So we sneak around the fight and then we chase after Crow into the building. The next scene shows us inside the building heading upstairs to confront Crow. Once in the room, we call out Crow, but Magic is standing behind us and pulls a gun on us. Magic doesn't shoot us right away though, and Crow tells him to shoot us. What is he waiting for? Magic then tells him no, and he hands us the gun. We talk about how he broke the code, and Crow tells us that he doesn't care about the code. It's all about making money. We then shoot the gun at the wall and tell him that he's not even worth our time, and then we head towards the door walking away from Crow. With our back turned, Crow pulls out his knife from his cane and stabs us in the back, knocking us down to the ground. And then he tries to stab us again while we're laying there, but we're able to roll away, and now we have to fight him. We start this fight with almost half our health gone, so we're going into this fight at a disadvantage. The first attempt at this, I didn't know we could get knocked out of the window, so I ended up getting knocked out of the window and I lost. So the second time I attempted this, my goal was to knock Crow out of the window to win the fight. Crow is actually a really good fighter if you let him square off on you, but I decided the window was the best option, so I just kept throwing him into the window. We have to do this 3 times to get him to go through the window. The first 2 times we throw him against the window, it just cracks the glass. The last time I was able to counter his attack and throw him into the wall, hit him a couple times, and then I threw him out of the window where he falls to his death. This ends up giving us the knockout on Crow in the fight. Once the fight is over, we get another cutscene. This scene starts with us looking down at Crow from the window. Blaze comes into the room, we thank him for backing us up, we dab him up, he gives us D-Mob's chain back, and he tells us that we need to go as we hear the sirens in the background. The scene fades to black and then the credits roll. We finish the game. I want to point out that there are a bunch of artists and celebrities in this game. I really like that. Why don't we get games like this anymore? But that finishes Def Jam Fight for New York. Would I recommend this game? I think I would recommend this game. The fighting is smooth and challenging, but I never felt like I couldn't win a fight. The story is interesting, and I like the way that our character is introduced to the game. I had my technical issues with the game, but like I said, it could have just been my copy of it. I also didn't like the way they extended the game. We had to fight all of our crew members at the same venues, so it was a bit annoying, but at least it made sense for the story. But let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to know what's next, stick around, but if not, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, and share this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Alright, so this should load in good. We got our GameCube list up here. We got our random number generator. We have 520 left. So on the count of 3, we're going to find out what we are playing next. So 3, 2, 1, and it is 277, which is Namco Machine, or Museum, Jesus. 50th anniversary is what we are going to play next. So I'll have to figure out how we'll go about doing that one.